How do you conquer lust? Hi, I'm Mike Mason. This is the Immortal Combat Podcast. The Immortal Combat Podcast is a podcast arm of Very Christie. Very Christie is a Catholic lay apostolate devoted to help men attain the full stature of Christ by growing strong in mind, body, and spirit. If you'd like to learn more about our work, you can check us out online at verychristie.com. All right, gentlemen, happy Lent. I hope you guys had a great Ash Wednesday, and the first few days of your Lent is off to an awesome start. I am recording this and releasing it late on this first Friday of the Lenten season because last night the schedule, my office here, I'm in my office at home, and it just didn't work out for me to get in front of the camera last night as usual. So this will get in your guys' inbox late this evening, but hopefully you guys will catch it over the weekend. All right, this week we are going to talk about the battle with lust. Okay. There are our two most fundamental appetites is our appetite for food and drink. We'll lump those two together, and our appetite for sex. Okay, these are base appetites, not base in the sense I'm not using that as a critical sense, but just they're basic to us. We carry them around inside of us, right? That the enemy of the flesh we carry with us all the time. Now, these appetites for food and drink and sex are not bad. They're intrinsically good. You know, we couldn't survive individually without food and drink, and our species would not survive without sex. So these are good drives. However, they have been disordered through concupiscence. And one of the great tasks of the spiritual life is to conquer these two passions, okay? Not to extinguish them, okay? That's not the business we're about in Catholic spiritual theology, but to order those things to Christ. So when we say in our creed to attain the full stature of Christ and order things to Christ, this is what we're talking about, okay? I want to encourage you guys to engage in this Lenten battle and this battle of the spiritual life. We call this podcast the Immortal Combat Podcast because that's what this is. Okay, that's what we're fighting with. And I'm going to have some great quotes from Scopoli's book on this to remind you guys of this, encourage you. But I really want to encourage you guys with this thought. If you can conquer, okay, if you can master your appetite for food and drink, and you can master your appetite, your sexual appetites, everything else in life is in easy mode. A true man orders his base appetites to Christ. Okay. Orders them to it. Okay. We order things so that we can attain the full stature of Christ and be the men he wants us to be. We order those to their proper ends, their proper goals. We want everything we do in life to be ordered towards Jesus Christ so that we can walk that narrow path to salvation and attain eternal life. The fight to order these lower appetites must be engaged in daily. And so what I want to give you guys some fight and encouragement from Scopoli, and then also look at what he says on how to fight in purity and give you guys some reflections on that. So let's begin with probably two chapters out of the big fighting chapters, or chapter 15 and 16. I'm going to read a couple quotes from 15, get you guys geared up. Then we are going to jump to the chapter that he discusses fighting impurity. And then we're going to jump back to 16 and leave off with another on a high note. So here's what he says in chapter 15. Fight, therefore, with great determination. Do not let the weakness of your nature be an excuse. If your strength fails you, ask more from God. He will not refuse your request. First thought, if we're going to win this fight, fellas, we have to ask God for the grace to do it. We can't win on our own. It's impossible. Okay? Can't. With God's grace, we can do all things. Okay. So if we think we're going to fail through our nature, we got to ask God diligently for the grace to overcome it. On the next page, he says, God delights in this kind of battle. And as far as possible, he encourages everyone to engage in it. All he asks of you is that you defend yourself courageously, and that despite any wounds you may receive, you never lay down your arms or leave the battleground. You must not shirk your duty. This war is unavoidable, and you must either fight or die. The obstinacy of your enemies is so fierce that peace and arbitration with them is utterly impossible. There's no negotiation with these enemies, especially lust. There's no calling it into a room, talking with it, negotiating, meeting it halfway. It must be destroyed. That vice has to be destroyed. Okay. Again, not the sexual appetite. That's good, but it has to be ordered to those ends which God has created it for. It's supposed to retain within marriage and include procreation, making babies, uniting one to a spouse so that they can be good parents. That's what the sexual act's for. It's not to be watched on the internet. It's not to be joked about. It's not to be demeaned. Okay. It is for that purpose and that purpose alone. We must fight or die, especially we men in this area. This podcast is made for men. Okay. If we don't fight this battle, we'll be consumed by it, period. Okay. You will lose if you don't fight. But God, as he said here, he delights in this battle. He loves it. Okay. He wants us to engage in it. So get in there and fight this thing. Now, in chapter 19, Scapoli gives us some advice on how to defeat our passions and impurity. Okay. I'm just going to walk through a couple of these and add my own thoughts to it. Okay. The first one, he says, before the temptation, you must avoid all persons and occasions that would expose you to sin. Okay. First thing, anything that exposes you to the sin of lust, temptation must be removed immediately. Anything. Okay. If your cell phone is exposing you to it, I'm not saying you have to throw it in the trash. Okay. Especially for our younger viewers, you might not want to do that immediately. Might have to a lot explain to your parents. You have to get a technology, get something where you do not have free reign with that. Guys, our cell phones, this computer is a portal to the pits of hell for a man. We must diligently protect ourselves from that. So we need to put in those barriers so that we're not engaging and looking at things that we're not supposed to. And there is things online to help you do that. Second, you can't put yourself in places with that. If you're an unmarried man and you have a girlfriend, you don't need to be in the basement in the dark alone with her. I don't care how old you are. 16, 18, 22 makes no difference. Single men don't need to be alone in dark places with girls that are not their wives, period. If you want to, if you're dating a girl and you want to take her for a walk or have alone time, walking in the park or taking her out there, that's fine. We don't do that alone. You must cut off every opportunity for this, every single one of them. Okay. So that's first thing. Anything that exposes us to sin has got to go. Second, we need to be cautious. And he says to run away. You do not test yourself with this vice at all. There are other sins when you can expose yourself to them to help strengthen yourself. Say you're trying to work on patience. You could hang around annoying people in order to practice patience. And in fact, he'll give advice on that in this book, that there's some temptations you can expose yourself to intentionally because they won't ruin your soul. Okay. Lust is not one of them. We flee from it immediately. Okay. We don't test ourselves in this department. Young people always ask, well, how far is too far? That's the wrong question. Okay. We don't test ourselves in the department at all. We will fail if we do. And I don't care if you're 44 years old like I am or 24 years old or whatever. We mess with this, we will fall. Okay. Sooner or later. Third, he says we need to avoid idleness. Okay. Now, we don't need to be busybodies either, but what he's saying is we need to make sure that we're filling our time and our days with good activities. He doesn't mean you can't take a nap or relax or something like that. We don't need to be busy all the time, but we do need to have a plan for life. What am I doing when I'm waking up? What am I doing throughout the day? Idle hands, idle time, idle hands are the devil's playground. Got to cut those things out. Okay. So if you're going to chill out and relax, be intentional about it, as weird as that sounds. Okay. Third, obey your superiors promptly and do what they command. Now, he's writing for people that may be in religious orders and such. Who are your superiors? Your parents. If you're a young person in school, your teachers. For all of us, our parish priest. When we have legitimate superiors, older guys, bosses. When we have legitimate superiors, give legitimate commands. Right? They're not asking us to do anything immoral. We need to obey those. Why? We need to practice obedience. If we can't obey the person that's standing right in front of us, we're not going to be able to obey the God we can't see. Okay. It's part of the honor thy father and mother commandment. If we can't honor the authority in front of us, we're not honoring him either. Okay. Now, I'm clearly not talking about some authority giving you an immoral. I'm not talking about that stuff. I'm saying when they give you a legitimate command, we have to practice obeying it, because we have to be in the habit and equipped to obey not only superiors, but the moral law. Okay. Next one, don't judge other people rashly. But for the grace of God, so go I. If someone else falls, don't be judgmental of them. Now, you can judge the fact that they sinned. You can declare what's true and objective. We don't judge people as Christians unfairly. But for the grace of God, so go I. We need to retain our humility. We don't look at someone who fell and think, well, geez, that guy's a piece of garbage. He's weak. No, because we can end up there too. And we have to remember the humility that the sin we don't commit, guys, is due to God's grace and his providence. Okay. So always maintain humility. We also need to examine. So that's what he tells us we need to do before we're tempted. Okay. Now he says when it comes to an examination of actual temptation, okay, so before we get tempted, do the things I just said. When the actual temptation comes, we need to analyze it. What are things inside of me that are contributing to this temptation? Okay. When we are tired, okay, when you're stressed, you're more susceptible to temptation. There's certain times of day you are, because when you're stressed out, right, you want soothing and comfort. You got to prepare for those moments. So if you know you're stressed in things and you might fall into not only this sin, but others in, say, the evenings when you're tired, you have to be prepared for that and have something else in its place. Okay. So you gotta look at interior plus exterior causes. What person, places, things am I putting myself in front of um, in order to be tempted? Lastly, after the temptation, if we survive the temptation, we do not give into it. We need to look back at what went well. Okay. Thank God for the grace he gave us. What went well for us there? Why were we successful? When you fall, you have to look back and say, where did I go wrong? Okay. The devil's going to pile on you when we fall, especially in this area. He's going to pile on. He's going to say, you're worthless. You're no good. You might as well just quit, be done with it, give yourself over to completely. No. Just like he said in earlier chapters, chapter 1, mistrust the self. We fall because we're weak. Own it. We fall because we didn't lean on God, but through God, all things are possible. Okay. So learn from your mistakes and then move on. Okay. Those are some thoughts on how to tackle lust. Men, if we can discipline our hunger and thirst through fasting, okay, if we can discipline the appetites for sex and discipline and get rid of the vice of lust, if we can do this, life is in easy mode. This is what a real man is. The culture tells you that a real man, slugs a bunch of beers and sleeps around and watches pornography. That's what the world sells us. They are wrong. That's effeminate. That's weak and pathetic. Okay. We're not going to be men like that. Allow God to transform you into the chaste, sober, temperate man that he wants you to be. And gentlemen, this is a fight, as I said before. So I will leave you with a couple quotes from chapter 16 on engaging in battle. Chapter 16, he says this: first thing in the morning, when you awake, open the windows of your soul. Consider yourself as on a field of battle, facing the enemy and bound by the ironclad law, either fight or die. Guys, we got to fight this fight or die. So every morning when you get up, renew your commitment to be chaste and sober and temperate. Then he goes on, fight courageously then. Do not neglect to mortify yourself. Continual war on your inordinate inclinations and vicious habits will gain the victory. Acquire the kingdom of heaven and unite your soul to God forever. To repeat, you must never become tired of this war. Everyone must serve and please God. It is impossible to avoid this fight. If anyone flees, he is exposed to being wounded and even destroyed. By revolting against God and indulging in a life of sensuality, with the world, the difficulties are not lessened, because both body and soul suffer greatly when given to luxury and ambition. Listen, we got to fight, fellas. If you give yourself over to this temptation, it'll ruin you in body and soul. There's nothing down the path of lust but death. We must fight for life. God loves this battle. He delights in it. He wants to get us to engage in it, and he will give us the grace to conquer. When we fall short, that's on us. We learn from it. We confess it. We get back on track, ask him for the grace, and conquer it yet again. So, gentlemen, keep up the good fight. Let's battle and win this fight against sensuality, so we can be the good and godly men Christ called us to be. God bless you guys. Have a great Lent. See you next time.